there, welcome to this episode of Author Success Show. The special guest we have today is Jennifer Anderson. Jen has over 25 years of experience as a leadership career strategist. She is the author of the book Call for Compassion. She consults with national and international companies to build leaders into leaders that everyone wants to work for. She is sought after as a speaker, coach, and consultant about leadership and career management. She is published in Forbes and various industry magazines. Hey, Jen, welcome to Author Success Show.
Hi, thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure for me to interview my clients because it gives me a lot of fond memories of my team working with you. So, Jennifer, let's start with where it all got started. So, you are a successful leadership coach and you've been doing this for many years, right? So, at
I
what
have.
point of time did you realize that you have a book in you which needs to be published?
Oh, I think I knew I had a book in me many, many years before I ever actually brought the book to life. I think there are a lot of us actually that are in that boat of there's a story, there's a message, a methodology, something. I think it's there, but I actually had really truly started formalizing the idea of, okay, if I'm going to write a book, what will be that message? Um, and so then it started to snowball from there for sure.
Right. Was it tough for you to narrow down on that message? Because for me right now, it's very clear that you're all about compassion. That
Uh-huh.
particular word is everywhere on your website, on your videos, and it's of course there in the book as well.
Yeah.
And for most people like you who have such a vast experience, you are probably good at so many things and you will have multiple messages inside of you, right? So,
Right.
how did you actually narrow down on that one thing?
Well, that was very much a God thing. So I yes. Like I have like two answers to that question because first of all, I'm a type of person that when God asks me to do something, I go and do the thing. Okay,
Mm,
just putting that out there. And I know that's not the reality for everybody, but for me, I follow that and that has helped me a lot in my life. And so there's that piece of it and then there's the other piece of it where I have had yes, like over 15 years of experience, right? So working with a lot of corporations, lots of
mm,
teams, a lot of individuals in teams, and hearing all of these different messages from different people of concern and problems and issues that they're dealing with. And so as somebody who's a consultant, as a coach,
mm.
I'm over here doing a variety of different services, right? So
Right.
um, I have workshops, I do speaking engagements,
Mm.
I do one-on-one coaching, right? So I mean, like there's a lot of different ways that I can come in and help based off of all these things that I'm hearing about. And so where I'm going with in answering this question, like how did I land on this one thing, is that in my mind is like, okay, there's all these pieces and parts
Mhm.
of stuff that I can do and that I can help make a difference. But I really started pondering on it and slowing down and saying, okay, what am I really hearing from people?
Mm.
Right? So like what's like the thing that they're really struggling with? And then I spent time just really pondering and meditating on that and thinking
Mm.
about that and thinking about different client groups that I've worked with and thinking about different individuals
Mhm.
within those groups. And so that's where I think more that divine spark came from, was because I'd slowed down and I'd taken some time to really think about,
Mm.
but what's the connecting thing, because it's like a tapestry, all these
Yeah.
little threads that weave together, and there's this bigger story, but it's like, but okay, but what's the constant thread that's being woven through all of this?
Mm.
And so anyhow, so when I had literally, it was a 3 o'clock in the morning awakening. I was awakened
Wow.
and and had this divine download, I call it. And God just told me, He said, it is time. We need to have a call for compassion. And that's the name of the book, Call for
Yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah.
And I just remember literally, I was like, in my master bathroom, like 3 o'clock in the morning with
Wow.
my journal, writing things down. And I'm like, no, this is right.
Mm.
How can I help to share and bring about that compassion can help with solving a lot of these workplace issues?
Right.
And so, and yet when you think about compassion, just in and of itself, there's a lot packed into that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but it's not like all of a sudden, like I'm billing myself as a compassion coach. No, no, I'm not doing that,
Right.
right? But I'm certainly focused in on that word, and people get it. It's not some weird woo woo word that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
It's not some like mismatch of words that I've put together or something. It makes sense. Like,
It's very simple and easy to
yeah,
understand, and everybody
right.
can relate to it. So
Yep.
what really one thing that really stood out from what you said is that a lot of us mostly get too confused about when we think about too many things, and when we keep using our mind instead of connecting from our soul and ask
Mhm.
the divine for solutions sometimes. Because when we slow
Right.
down and look inside, the answers are all there. It's just that our busy
Mhm.
mind wants to complicate things. So
Right.
thanks for sharing that, Jen. So once you decided that this is going to be the topic and you need to start writing, I know you worked with a book coach who is our mutual friend. So,
Yes.
did you just get started with writing on your own and then decide to work with a coach, or how was the process of writing?
No. Yeah, no, I decided right out of the gate to work with a book writing coach for a couple of reasons. For that is because I knew I am not an author. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I've never brought a book to life before. I created a journal, but that's very different than creating an actual book. And so I found that I was going to need somebody to help guide me and help support me along the way. I just knew it. I knew that I was. Plus,
Mm,
being busy with running my business,
mhm.
I have contractors working for me. I have customers that I'm doing training for them and coaching for them. Just all the things, even dealing with quarterly stuff with my bookkeeper and accountants, right? Like there's always
Right.
going to be something in running the business. Writing a book in and of itself is its own thing.
Mm,
It's completely a different piece. And so it doesn't fit in the schedule of every week I need
right.
to have a team meeting. It doesn't fit in the schedule of every month I make sure that credit card statements get to my bookkeeper. Like it doesn't
Mm,
it's not a normal thing because most of us are not writing a book every day and every week.
yeah,
Like you
exactly.
write the book and you launch it into the world and then you're doing the other stuff, right? So
Yeah.
me, it's like, okay, there's like this time and place where I needed somebody who can help me because I didn't want to take the time to figure it out. Like, that's not my expertise.
Yeah, I think that's such a
Right.
wise thing to do, because when we're doing something for the very first time and you want predictable results, you want to have the book out in a few months, it's just best to work with somebody who has
Right.
done it so many times. I think
Right.
that's a very wise decision that you took back then, Jen. So at that
Like,
time, how was your writing schedule like? Would you write every
oh, yeah.
single day, or how did that happen?
Yes. So, like I said, it's not normal. So then I had to stop and say, okay, looking at my week,
Yeah.
when can I fit in writing time? And
Okay.
so, and over time, I tried different things. Like sometimes I would try, it's like I
Mm,
already get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I would say, okay, if I want to have an hour of writing, I'm going to get up at 5. There
mm.
probably people are going to listen to this interview and be like, oh, for the love, there's no way I'm getting up with that. That's how, so there are going to be different, responses to that. Or there would be, I also knew for myself that I'm more clear thinking in the morning than I am in the afternoon.
Mm,
So I didn't want to have a full day of coaching and training and whatever. Then to just kind of give my scraps, if you will, to the book. I
mm.
was like, no, like if I'm doing it, I want to do it right. Like, and so
Yeah.
I would skip the afternoons, but and then for me personally, I often hit a second wind in the evening, like after my family members go to bed.
Mm.
like around 9:30 at night. And
Right.
so sometimes I'd have a real spark of genius. But the thing that made the difference for me was really habit stacking it with something else.
Hmm.
That was a thing that made a huge difference. So I always um so for example, I get my daughter to school. She was in she was in kindergarten at the time. I get her to school, and then I would exercise. And while exercising, at the time I was doing a lot of walking. And
Hmm.
so I would walk and I would dictate my book.
Right.
And so I
Such a
was doing
smart
my
thing.
exercise and also dictating. Now, what was dictated was not verbatim that ended up in the book. It's still, and
Of
you still need to
course.
go back and edit it, but it could at least get like ideas
Hmm.
out, and so there's lots of iterations. But
Yeah.
once I started doing that, I noticed the amount of words on the paper, because as an author you start realizing, you're like, oh, how many thousands of words do I have? Right? You want
Right.
to see that number increase. It made a huge difference for me to see that increase of the
Hmm.
amount of words and concepts.
Right.
And there's such great dictation software. I just use Google Dictate. Just
Absolutely. You
write
don't
a
need
Google
anything
Doc.
fancy. Yeah. And
No, no, it's easy.
what I love about what you said is that every author is so unique, right, Jen? And what worked for you may not work for somebody else. But unless you understand what works for you, and we just try copying what all the other successful authors did, then we may end up hitting a roadblock. And this idea of walking and narrating is such a smart thing to do because not everybody prefers to write first. For some people it just flows, when they put their pen to paper it just flows, but for some talking comes more naturally. So I
Right,
think doing what
exactly.
works best for you is the best thing to do. The other thing
Yeah,
I love about your book called For Compassion is that it's not like a 10-step guide. This is chapter 1 and you need to do this. It doesn't flow that way. It's a story. It's a beautiful story
yeah,
that
thank
you've
you.
woven throughout the book. And
Yeah,
in from the reader's point of view, that's the most interesting format or structure for a book because it's so engaging. But what I've heard from authors is that when I tell them that ditch this modular framework, go for a story framework, they would tell me that it's so difficult to come up with a creative story. So how did you weave that story so beautifully into the core concept of the book?
yeah, thank you for that. So, I well, it definitely felt guided. I love to tell stories. Like, if anybody follows me on anything I talk about, like on YouTube or any of the LinkedIn lives that I've done, and
Mhm.
if you're in one of my classes, if I'm in a coaching call, somebody, I love the power of story. So I didn't have to be convinced that
Right.
story does a good job. I already know that. We are a story loving family in our household. We're constantly, we go to the library, we get huge stacks of books,
Mhm.
and we're reading and we tell stories. And my daughter, who's now 8, one of her favorite questions is, tell me a story from your childhood about whatever, right? So she's constantly like, we love story. So
Mhm.
again, if there's somebody who's listening to this and they're like, well, I'm not good at story, right? Like if that's not their thing, then maybe writing some kind of a story in your book, maybe that's not going to be authentic to them. I don't know. It
Yeah.
may not work, right? But for me, taking the idea, so there's a guy in the book named Tom Anderson,
Mhm.
and the story is all about him at work and also in his personal life and things
Mhm.
that are happening that allow him to show compassion to other people, show compassion
Right.
for himself, etc. And then so that's one aspect of the book.
Mhm.
So to me, the wonderful thing about story is you can add to it.
Yeah.
So I started kind of jumping in. I'm like, oh, here's this little vignette. Oh, there's this vignette and these other little pieces. And then it actually made it easier for me to weave it together instead of having completely random, disparate topics.
Mhm.
It actually made it easier for me to bridge from one concept to the next. Not that it
Right.
was like A, B, C, D.
Not in a linear fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like one little story might come to me like, oh, that's it ultimately ended up being spot P. Oh, here's another one's G. Right. So, but then that's, I mean, nowadays, it's not like we're on our typewriters, right? We have our computers, we can copy and paste and cut
Yeah.
and paste around,
Move things
you know,
around.
yeah, exactly. So, but again, if you're somebody who enjoys story at all, like
Mhm.
just remember, like, if you've got a book in you, I feel like that's an opportunity for that story to come forward. So how do you want to share the story?
Beautiful. So you had these key pieces, right? For each chapter, you had this keyword that was already in place, and you had Tom's story, and you just had to think of ways to connect the
Right.
story together.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because outside of the story part, there are very specific business topics that associate
Yeah,
with that chapter too, right? But the story is one piece, but then the
mm,
business topics are there too. So it works. And in
exactly.
fact, one reviewer of my book, she said that she actually did not like the story stuff as much, but she loved the parts that were just the business. And in that moment, I thought, that's exactly why I feel good about writing to
Right.
both styles, right?
Exactly. This is something that's really smart because everybody is different, even the readers. Some are right
Mhm,
brained predominantly, and some are left brained. The right brain
mhm.
ones would love the story more than the business bits, but the left brain ones just want the takeaways. And
Mhm.
you didn't leave it to their imagination. At the end of every chapter, you actually talk about the key things that you want to convey. So I think
Yes.
that's a really nice chapter structure which you arrived at. It's consistent throughout the book, right? That's also something that's pretty well done. So
Thank
then
you.
coming to the publishing part, once you finish the
Mhm,
writing, how was
mhm.
your experience of designing the cover and the interiors? Because your book clearly stands out from the other business books out there. It has the cycle as the cover, and
Yes.
it has these cute little tire marks throughout the book, and
Mhm.
the cycle bell. These are cute little illustrations throughout. So, how was that
Yeah,
experience for you?
sure. Well, for me, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm first going to make a clarifying comment. I feel as an author, we are a steward of a message. I do. I think that if we are going to bring that message forward, it's our responsibility. And I feel that very much. I feel like I'm the steward to bring this forward. And so as I was doing that, I kept pondering on and and also praying, just like, what do I need to do to help make this book be the best that it's supposed to be, to really help inspire people to respond to this call for compassion.
Mm,
And so I I use that as the okay, so what else can I do? Like what is, and so as opposed to going to Barnes and Noble and flipping through a bunch of books and saying in the business section and saying my book has to look like this, right? Because this is
right.
what everybody else is doing. That's not how I handled it. I flipped through books and I saw things. I'm like, oh, I like this idea. Like, this is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
And so I literally was at Barnes and Noble, and I don't know how international your community is, but that's a large bookseller here in the United
Yeah.
States. And I just went right to the business section, and I was there with my cell phone, and I was looking at things, and I literally held up the book and take a picture and say, I kind of
Mm,
like this, right?
sure.
Not that I ripped off anybody's idea.
Mm,
I didn't steal their idea, but it's just like, I just like how this looks.
yeah.
And also I've read, I don't even know how many hundreds of books in my lifetime. Um, and so, but I just stopped and I thought, what were things that I liked about other books?
Hmm.
What really resonated with me? So I
Yeah.
started to kind of pull thoughts together from like a visual standpoint. But in
Hmm.
the end, I still felt like as the steward of the book, it's my responsibility to shepherd this effort to make sure that it moves forward in a way that I feel is the best way, because as Jen Anderson, what am I doing to bring this book to life? Like, somebody
Yeah.
else there could be writing a book about compassion. I have no idea. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, right? This is my book. This is what I'm working on. And so so anyhow, so that just going with that thought of, I'm looking simply for ideas. What do I like?
Hmm.
Right? Like, why reinvent the wheel? Why? Right? But there was enough reinventing of the wheel, if you will, just in figuring out, oh, okay. So in the book, there's Tom and his son Matt restore an old bicycle.
Hmm.
And in the restoration of the bicycle, um, each part of the bike that's being restored is associated with an aspect of being compassionate.
Right.
And so I started thinking about, what do I want this to look like?
Hmm.
And I realized I wanted original art.
Right.
And
Not a
so
stock image.
not a stock image. No,
Yeah.
I didn't want stuff from Canva or whatever. Like I didn't want those kinds of things,
Hmm.
right? I wanted original art. So once I hit on that, I thought, okay, who do I know who's an artist? And this is where I think sometimes people go, I have to have all the answers, which I think is not true. You
Yeah.
don't. I'm not an artist that way. I
Hmm.
mean, I can sketch out something general, but I'm not an artist.
Hmm.
So I reached out to a friend of mine who's a comic book artist, and he was actually too busy to take on the commission. And I thought, oh shoot,
Oh.
okay. But then I thought, okay, no big deal. And he said, well, I know somebody else.
Mhm.
He referred me to somebody else who
Okay.
that's the gentleman that I ended up working with. And over the series of a couple of months, we had iterations. So he's working on the artwork. Meanwhile, I'm working on the book and writing this stuff, right? But I had to give him guidance. So if anybody's thinking about working with an artist, you have to give the artist direction.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, hey, I'm thinking about a bicycle, go make it happen. Like, what? Like, you have to help them understand.
Because it's
And
your
so,
book and you have a unique vision
right,
which only you can
exactly.
communicate. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Again, being the steward of it, right? Like I
Right.
own this, so I need to make sure I communicate that to him. And so then, and again, artists, especially people who are used to being commissioned to do things, they they will know what to do. They're going to know how to work with you. You just follow along. You know, you
Mm.
don't not like some like here's the 10 questions you have to ask every artist. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna know, right? But you need to
Yeah.
give them the bigger view, the bigger picture, and then go from there. So that's how we ended up with the beautiful bike on the cover and the tire tread inside of it and different bike
Yeah.
parts and whatnot. And so, um, but then also those become assets that now I can use in marketing. They become assets
Sure.
that I can use when I'm putting together a PowerPoint, when I'm speaking
Yeah.
to a group. It's,
Wherever.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's the best part about self-publishing your book, because if you had gone to a traditional publishing house, you might not have the creative freedom to do all these
right.
beautiful things.
Exactly. No, it's totally true. In fact, that was one of the key things I was thinking about for today's conversation was this is exactly why I didn't want to go and find a publishing company to do it for me
Right.
because it's plus I'm going to have to be on their schedule of when they want
Mm.
the book to go live. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to follow exactly what it is that they want me to do. And as the steward of the book and of this message,
Mhm.
that again, God given, I mean, it was like, I don't have to do that.
Right.
Right. And so, and to me, that felt really good that I could be in control of it.
Mm. Yeah.
But then that's also why I put in the fail safe of working with a book writing coach too, because that accountability factor. I mean, when you're working with a publisher, you're going to have somebody who's going to be on your back. They're going to
Yeah.
give you very specific deadlines. So I needed to have that, like, no, by this date, you need to be at this point, so that was still very helpful. Again, because it's not like
Right.
I'm just sitting around with nothing to do. Like
Right.
all these other things, I'm also a wife and a mom and,
So
running a
true.
household, right? Just all the things. And
Mm.
so my life isn't just wrapped around writing a book.
Right. There are so many
And
other things that you need to do. Yeah.
right,
And
exactly.
my team was really glad with the kind of inputs you gave on all these different things, because not every author is so involved in the whole process. Some of them just want to outsource the whole thing and sit back and relax, which is fine because probably they have spent a lot of energy in writing and now they don't want to be so involved with the publishing and marketing. But we, as a service provider for self published authors, would love to see authors being more involved, like in your case, because it's
Mhm.
your book and that's what makes every book unique if the author brings in their flavor. So you did that really well, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. And you guys were great to listen to me and my requests, right? And as and so, but I also, um, it was one of the nice thing about working with you guys too is that you would also point out things that I didn't know I was supposed to be looking at because you've done this a million times. I don't know. Well, I don't know how many times, but I know you've done it a lot. And
Mhm.
so again, I didn't have to worry about here's my 10 things I have to ask, right? Like the 10 things
Mhm.
asking an artist. It's like, no, I'm coming to you guys. You're the expert. You know what's going on. and guide me, help me see
Mm,
the things that I don't know that I'm supposed to be looking for. That's
right.
helpful because I think you can absolutely self-publish. You can design something, you can throw it up on Amazon.
Yeah. But it shouldn't
You
look
can,
self-published, which is why
yeah,
work
exactly.
with the
Right.
experts.
Yeah. Right.
True.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pardon
The
me.
other thing that I want you to share with other authors is the way you got praises for the book. So, this is a very important section which a lot of authors ignore. And a day before we hit the publish button, they realize that, oh my God, I forgot to get testimonials for my book.
Right.
And then, we'll have to make them get the reviews, which happens after the book is published. But you managed to get these nice testimonials from leaders in different industries well before the book got published. So how was
Mhm.
that process of reaching out to people and getting those praises even before the book got published?
Yeah, so you're referring to inside of the book, how
Yeah.
there are things that, yeah, that praise me. So a lot of that came from the people. Again, I've been in this line of work a long time, and so reaching out to people who are that we have a good, respectful relationship, right? And so it actually wasn't hard. I think if somebody like hasn't ever really done consulting,
Hmm.
and if they are like just getting started and they're like, I want to have a book, then I think actually that part's going to be a lot harder. And
Hmm.
so then it's like, well, what are you going to do? Maybe you could have like one or two comments or something, but I've got like 2 pages and I
Yeah.
narrowed it down to that. Actually, I had a lot more that I could choose from.
So did you
And
actually
so
send them the entire book or did you send them a synopsis? How was it like?
So the praises inside the book, the praises for me, that
Ah,
was not specifically about the book. That's about
sure.
who I am and what's going on. But the
Hmm.
book itself, for getting people to review the book and to put reviews on Amazon, yes, absolutely. People got the entire book so they could read it and they could give a very honest review, right, with integrity, right, versus me typing up and saying, hey, on this day, post this, on this day, post that. No, I wanted it to be authentic.
Right.
Um, and so there's a combination of depending, again, it depends on what you're trying to do with your book, right? But
Hmm.
I think most of us want to use the book to position us in our expertise.
Right.
So then it turns into, okay, but what is it you want to put inside of the book?
Hmm.
For your expertise, depending on whoever the person is, what they're, what it is that they do, that can be very different.
Sure. Absolutely. So now that the book is out, it's been more than a month, right?
Yeah.
Now. So,
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah, just a month,
yeah.
yeah.
How does it feel? Like, what are some of the things that you are noticing change around you?
Yeah. So well, first of all, it just feels fabulous to put author behind my name and,
Yeah.
have this legitimate, like, hey, I have a book, like to put that behind, it's amazing. It feels different just for me personally because there's a lot of things that I needed to do for bringing the website that goes along with the book, any of the supplemental things that go with the book, etc. And so, but it's so fun, even regardless of those kind of things. It is so amazing to reach out to key people in
Mhm.
business and to say, hey, I wrote this book and I want to send you a copy of it.
Lovely.
And and people are like, what, you wrote the book, you did, and you want to send me, they're floored by that, they love it. And so so that's a completely like a whole nother level, another stratosphere, if you will, of connecting with your customers, you
Mm.
know, in a different
Yeah.
way. In books, it's because there's a tangible thing,
Mm.
even if you're sending them a digital version of it, right? But there's a tangible thing
Sure.
about the fact that it's an actual book versus like blog posts or messages on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It simply feels different. I mean,
It's not the
even
same. Yeah.
no, yeah, it isn't the same. And I think about whenever I've fallen in love with a book and it's like, oh, okay, so I want to follow this person on LinkedIn, and what are they talking about on Instagram, and do they have a podcast and a YouTube channel, right? Like
Mhm.
the book really kind of brings things together, and that's how it also feels differently for me too, because it's like I'm using the book as a way to
Mm.
feed information into my social media, into my email newsletter, etc. Like it's a wonderful way to bring it all down to one core body. And yet, with my book, Call for Compassion, again, I'm not. I want to be really clear. Like it's. I haven't stopped talking about other things too.
Right.
Because in the end, I'm all about leaders and their teams getting along better with each other and connecting better with other teams inside of the department. Last I checked, if you're a little compassionate and kind, it's going to help you connect better with
Yeah.
people, right? Yes. But
Right.
there are other things that I do also beyond that.
Right. And I'm really happy that you did not just leave the Amazon link and wait for people to buy, but you identified the key leaders that you want to reconnect with and you actually sent
Right.
them the physical book. And that
Right.
will have a lasting impression on their minds and hearts as well.
Right.
Right. So, what would be
Absolutely.
your one message to all those aspiring authors out there, Jen?
I would say to, well, maybe it comes back to kind of one of the things we talked about before, which is stop and really think about it of what is it that you really want to talk about.
Mhm.
What's just like pick one thing that you really, really want to talk about. And I've had people, tell me they're like, oh, like niching down to one, like, what do you, I'm like, okay, listen, you can write more books if you
Yeah.
want to. I mean, quite honestly, even while I was in the middle of writing this book, I had ideas for other things and I just wrote it down. I put it in a
Mhm.
parking lot. I'm like, I'll come back to it later. Okay.
Mm.
And so, but just getting one thing done and getting it out the door, because there's lots of moving parts and pieces just to get that one thing done. So if you're trying to write 3 or 4 books at the same time, you're not going to complete
Yeah.
all of them, but just pick one that makes sense. But if you're somebody who has any of that inclination to reach out to God or whatever your higher power is, ponder on it, get clear about some key things, and then take it to
Mm.
God, take it in prayer, right,
Yeah.
and say, what do you think about this?
Sure.
Right. And so I think we'll be guided and directed. And when I look at where Call for Compassion is today, I don't know that it's much different than the general thought I had in my mind. Yeah, there's some little nuances and details, but the
Mhm.
general thought of, I really want to help people to know how they can be a compassionate leader.
Mm.
That's like my end goal of the book, right? And then
Yeah.
to help them as a compassionate leader, then to have more collaboration in the workplaces. That's ultimately where the story ended up. And
Right.
so there's that old saying from there's Stephen R. Covey wrote a book a million years ago called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
It's been around since like the 70s or something like that. But one of the habits in there is start with the end in mind.
Mhm.
And I would say that too. Like, what's your end goal?
Right.
For me, I wanted to have a book so it could help in this whole effort to help leaders to be more compassionate. So
Mhm.
that was my end goal. So then I start with that in mind as my end goal. And so then then it keeps you on target. And
Mhm.
so I'm kind of giving 2 things when you said to ask for one. First of
No
all, just
problem. Please go
right?
ahead.
Yes, but then the second thing is, but then in that, just what's your end goal? Because
Mhm.
I'll tell you what, that whole like bright shiny light squirrel thing, it's
Yeah.
legit. It's so legit. You're going along like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about this? Like,
Yeah.
stop, time out, put it on the parking lot, just put it on the list. Come back to it later.
Yeah.
Okay. But just stay focused on getting this thing done.
Yeah.
So that would be some pearls of wisdom if they should be of wisdom to somebody.
Absolutely. Like, thank you so much for being so candid and sharing all of these things with us, Jen. So, where can people find out more about you and follow your
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can certainly go to callforcompassion.com. And from there, they'll be able to get in touch. And so that's for the book. And so that would probably be the easiest since we're talking about the book itself right now. So
Right.
yeah.
So, did you
Yeah.
block the URL after you decided on the book's title?
Yeah, yeah, no, literally. Yeah, this is a funny story. So anyhow, God gives me a download and he says, okay, the book is called for compassion. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I write all the things down. I go to bed. I wake up a few hours later and I go to the internet to go to buy a URL and
Yeah.
I put in to see if callforcompassion.com was available.
And it was.
I'm like, done. We're bringing this baby to life. Okay, God knows what's up. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. And you can buy URLs, for $10 or what. It's not, it's like whatever. You know what I mean? And so,
absolutely.
I mean, that is if it's available. But to me, that was just another reinforcement of I'm on the right
Hmm.
path. Let me do this. Now, I didn't spend a bunch of time on the website because I needed to write the book,
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, let me focus on the book first. And then little by little, I did things on the website.
Yeah.
But
No, the
anyhow,
exact same thing happened when I started Happy Self Publishing. I was thinking too much about the name of the company, but I just felt that my clients need to be happy, and I thought Happy Self Publishing sounds good. And I went to GoDaddy, and the URL was available, and that's it.
mm,
When I
yeah.
decided that's going to be
Yeah,
the name.
right. Absolutely. And as a customer, thank you. Thank you for helping me to be happy, through this. And I mean, there's glitches and things, but you guys just take care of, the stuff as we're moving along. And it's a big deal to get the support. So thanks so much for
Thank
to
you so
you.
much, Jen, and thank you for being a part of Author Success Show. And for all of those people listening, we are going to have her books link as well as her website in the show notes. So make sure you check it out. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you.